meeting to order. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing up will be the public hearing for city code amendments.
Okay, tonight we have a public hearing. We're going to look at a couple items in our city code. The first one references Chapter 151, the administrative lot splits. That part of the city code addresses the process and the steps that we take when you are either combining a lot or separating one lot into two, for two residential homes. We have the process laid out in the city code. I was working a little bit with Jason Moran on this. We did find a simpler, more user-friendly version, and I'm going to recommend that we do that in our city code for Chapter 151. And then the second part of the changes to our city code would be in the R1 and R2 zones. We are allowing that if you own a vacant property next to yours, you can build an accessory shed or accessory structure or garage on that empty lot. Normally our code says that if there's an empty lot, the first structure built has to be a residential. But I'm going to recommend that if Andy owns a lot next to him that's empty and he wants to put a garage up, he's allowed to do that. Building permit and everything like that.
So people don't join those lots normally?
They don't
first?
have to then.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Are we still restricting the size of the shed or building that's going on that lot?
Yes, 900 square feet.
That's still the 900.
Yep.
Okay.
And if this is approved tonight, I'll submit the summary to Michael and we can get that in the paper. And then it will go into effect once it's published in the paper. Any questions?
I'd move we adopt this by the recommendation of the employees that we employ to research this, so.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
And the public hearing closed at?
We'll close the public hearing at 7:04.
All right. Our next step here, we're gonna, with public forum, Eric Dashner is present tonight. He has an Eagle Scout project he'd like to visit with the city council on. Eric, if you would like to, take the mic, it's all you.
Thank you. Hello guys. So I'm a part of VSA's Troop 89 here in Janesville, and I'm here today to discuss and hopefully get some of my questions answered about my Eagle project that I'm working towards. So I have talked with the American Legion that's in town, and I've decided that I want my Eagle project to be a retired flag collection box, and I would like to have it put in hopefully the city park. I first thought of this idea because Cole Blomstrom made the retirement flag fire pit in the city park, and I was hoping that could possibly go hand in hand with it. So I want to do this because there are many people who have flags that could be retired sitting around in their houses, and instead of them either going into boxes or just thrown away entirely, this could be a place that they could be retired, gracefully and all that. So I have a few pictures, or a picture of the box that I was possibly doing. It's kind of like a mail collection box. Could I
Yep.
pass this? So I am hoping to possibly purchase or maybe get a USPS mail collection box, either donated or purchased. So then I can vinyl wrap it with everything that says what it is and has BSA on it and American Legion on that as well. And then I know, like, since it's a public forum and all of that, I can't have my question, like, get approval and all of that, but I have a rough outline of what I was hoping could possibly be done to go with the fire pit that's already in the city park. So the illustration shows the fire pit that's already there and then two possible ideas of where the box could be put, and then put some either mulch or rock or any type of beautification around it. So. And the last thing I have, I have two more things, sorry. I am currently stuck on trying to find a mailbox that I could either get donated or purchased, so if anyone has anything that they could, offer up or have connections or know someone who knows connections, to possibly do that. And then to help this project, I would also like to ask for some funding so then I can, lay the concrete and put in the beautification stuff. So my very rough estimate on it, I will get more concise numbers later, but I was thinking the foundation with the concrete and the plywood and stuff like that would be around $50. Beautification, I know that's up to you guys, so then I would have to figure out what you guys would want surrounding it and all of that. And then the collection box, I'm still unsure if that could be purchased or donated and stuff. That's all I have. If there's any questions, I don't know if you can really ask them or anything, but...
I believe when Evan Olson did his project, that, we kind of left the design to him.
Okay.
As far as the rocks and the flowers and stuff. We didn't have input on that one.
Okay.
I know in the past I believe we've done $250 for, the previous projects, so I wouldn't imagine this would be any different as far as the funding goes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So this is dependent on you coming up with a mailbox, an old mailbox. That's your plan, correct?
Yes, so...
So will you delay the implementation of this if you can't find a box in the next month or two?
What'll most likely happen if I can't figure out how to obtain a box, there's a chance that I could partner with the school and help build one myself, obviously with people helping me and all of that, because they have a very nice plasma cutter, so we could cut the steel ourselves and then piece it together and all of that.
I like that plan, as long as you aren't waiting, and I'd like to see you complete it, before winter or before next spring. 'Cause while you're in school yet, even.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get this done before winter. If it's earlier, even better, but that's my hard deadline on it.
How many flags will this structure hold, do you think?
That, I'm not sure, because, some people might have, smaller flags, or they have bigger flags and all of that. It will be big enough to, hold a decent amount. I would say, honestly, it'd probably be around the size of this podium. So,
And in future years, when you move on, after you graduate from high school, you're out of the scouts and things, do we have a plan of who would monitor this and?
yeah, the American Legion in town would do that, because, they're my project beneficiary, and they would handle all of that.
Sounds like you've thought this through pretty well. Thank you very much.
All right. Anything else?
Bill,
Yeah, just-
is that an action item for later on in our meeting?
Well, I think we can do the up to 250 like we've done for,
Traditionally, we've said,
Yep.
do we have to motion that, or can we simply, it's an ongoing precedent that we've set? All right, yeah.
and just keep in touch with me or Joel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much,
Thank you.
especially
Thank
for
you.
that donation.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Give me your contact info. Then we can put in all of the box discuss that in front of it, but I can't remember now who brought it. Got it. And if I can get a contact for you, then I'll give you, someone to talk to and ask. Perfect, thank you.
Back and approve the minutes.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Wow.
We have Roman numeral number 4 now.
I just want to put,
We can do the
okay.
number 4 there. Yeah.
Item number 4 is the long-term plan presentation.
Yeah, so the city of Janesville has a 5-year long-term plan that's about 6 years old. So we're working with Abdo Financial Solutions, and they have put together a 5-year long-term plan for us that they're gonna present tonight. Anything else you want me to say, or?
Oh, I think that's good. Awesome. Good evening, council. Annette Storm, and I also have Vicki Holthouse here with me with Abdo. Wanted to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to work with staff to update and continue the 5-year long-term plan. There is a lot of information in the 40-some page document before you, so we're just going to kind of do a very high-level kind of overview, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. But feel free to stop me along the way if something jumps out at you, and we can definitely talk through it then. I'm going to start on page 18 of the document. It's where our capital improvement plan kind of starts. So pages 18 through 41 are going to overview all of the capital improvement funds and or the proprietary, so your water and your sewer and electric overview there. So on page 18, so when we kind of go through this, the top section is going to have the information for any of the planned capital improvement or equipment over the next 5 years. So you can see that the first one that we're kind of looking at is the Police Capital Reserve Fund 410. As you can see, there's 2 different years for squad replacement. So that's kind of the top section. So then the next section down kind of goes through the revenues and expenditures, and then the capital overlay there. So it kind of shows you how the fund is going to perform over the next 5 years. And at the very bottom, it gives you the cash balances throughout those, or the projected cash balances for the 5 years for that particular fund. So we'll move on from this one, as there's not a lot happening for that particular fund. So if we go to page 20, the first one fund that we'll kind of really dig into here is the Fire Capital Reserve Fund. And as you can see at the top section is the planned improvement, whether that's the equipment there with the tanker replacement or the pumper lease, and then the planned pumper purchase. So you can kind of see that the overall impact on this particular fund, if we look at the bottom section, the revenues, in 2024, there was a property tax levy of 150. So you can see as the next 5 years, that fund, we are predicting just about a 3% increase in property taxes over the next 5 years for each year. And then if you pay attention to the bottom for the cash balances, it fluctuates throughout the year depending on kind of those capital purchases, but overall the cash is sitting fairly well for this particular fund. So then if we move to the next page, 22, we will review the street/park capital reserve fund. A little bit more happening with this fund, as you can see that there is a payloader / snow plow, a street sweeper, tractor, and then 2 major street improvements in the years 2027 and 2029. And then if we go to page 24, that's going to show you kind of that bottom section for that particular fund. And in this fund, we are looking at going from about a $50,000 property tax levy to $100,000 in order to sustain those the proposed capital improvements. And as you can see with this fund, at the very bottom of page 24, there is a debt service fund related activity section that we have yet to see. So for this particular fund, we are proposing that there's going to be debt issued in the years 2027 and 2029 for those particular street improvements. So this is forecasting those additional debt payback starting in 2028. So next we're going to move to page 32, which is the street and improvement fund for, sorry, wrong page.
Playground.
Yep, one more. The water fund, 601. So this one looks just a little bit different as it is a business-like. So we have the capital improvements at the very top, and then down below is actually the statement of cash flows. We predict for the water fund, so you can see the capital improvement at the top, along with those 2 street improvements. That once again, we're predicting all of the funds are going to be issuing new debt in order to pay those back. So the cash flow section kind of towards the bottom, we are predicting for the water fund a 4% revenue increase, so rates will increase about 4% over the next 5 years. The same with the expenditures, we're looking at about a 4% increase for that. So if we take a look at kind of the cash, what the overall impact of everything, so at the end of 2023, there was cash of about $582,000, and if you follow that along the bottom into page 33, you can see that it raises to about $800,000 just to allow a good cash flow for the particular activities, along with then the additional cash needing to be paid back for those debt issuances, the 5 years kind of beyond this plan as well. So then if we move into page 34, we're looking at the sewage collection fund, 602. Same thing here, those kind of the 2 main street improvements are kind of the main meat of the improvement next 5 years. With the sewer collection fund, we are showing a 12% increase for the revenue for the first, I guess I didn't write that note down, for the first 2 years, and then after that I believe it goes down, and we can circle back on that when we get to a different section. And then the 5% straight across the board for the expenses. So then you can see the cash in 2023 was at $488,000. And we're looking, once again, very similar to the water fund, at increasing that balance in order to prepare for those capital improvements, along with the additional debt to be issued in 27 and 29. All right. And the next page is the storm water fund. 603. For this fund, the only two planned improvements over the next 5 years are those street improvements. There isn't, for the next 5 years, there is nothing being predicted for a rate increase, so the revenue is at a 0%, so it's staying flat. Expenses are being inflated for about 5%. If you see the cash and cash equivalents for this fund at the end of 2023 was $332,000. And then once again, as previously stated in the last two funds, we're building that up in order to account for the additional debt payments for 27 and 29 issuance. And page 38, it is the Light and Power Fund. And this was modeled after the utility rate study done by the Missouri River. So you can see that the main part of the capital improvement is actually in 2024 for the $2.5 million in power plant updates. And then the cash flows, the receipts and payments, everything there was mirrored to what the utility rate study was done. So if you follow that plan with the rates going forward, then that is what we are mirroring on this report. I'm going to kind of pause there. Mm-hmm.
Does this reflect the repairs that we're looking at financing right now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So the $2.5 million that we have in the 2024 column, it has the power plant updates there along with, I think there's some miscellaneous items in there. So there is debt being issued for proceeds from bond, kind of in that bottom section for the 2024 column. So it's showing the bond proceeds there of the $2.5 million.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm just going to pause there for a second because that's kind of the overview for the capital piece. If there are any questions before we kind of move to the next section. If not, I'm going to move to page 14. And I'm just going to get there. It takes me a couple seconds. So on page 14, this is an overview of the current outstanding debt, along with mirroring what we had just previously discussed about issuing the debt for in 2027 and 2029. So as you can see in 2023, at the bottom of that first column, it says total for all funds for debt outstanding is the $8.2 million. And if you follow that line all the way across into page 15, you can see that the total debt goes from that $8.9 million up to the $11.6 million to account for all of the debt being issued for the electric fund for the 2024 and then along with the 2027 and the 2029 improvement. Okay. All right, next we're going to jump to page 11, which is the schedule of the annual cash fund balances. So this page will actually kind of condense everything that we've talked about, and then it also brings into account the general fund along with some special revenue funds that weren't necessarily presented in those capital improvement sections because there isn't a whole lot of capital activity going on. So as you can see, it gives you each kind of different section along with the cash balances and kind of how they're trending over the next 5 years based on the assumptions that are at the beginning of this study. So as you can see, I first want to kind of review the business type funds, kind of the bottom section there. We just went over those balances in the previous slides. So next I kind of wanted to take a look at the general fund. So at the very top of the page, you can see the cash balances for the general fund remains relatively flat because we always want a balanced budget, so we aren't predicting, a loss or a gain in this current report. I do want to talk about the fund balance policy that has been established. There is a 40% fund balance policy that the city does follow right now. So if we go to page 8, page 8, this is kind of the key highlights. So at that first little section there, we had talked that in 2023, so when the audit was presented, the general fund had a 41.7% unassigned fund balance. So the OSA recommends anywhere between 35 and 50, but the city has that 40% fund balance policy there. So in 2023, that threshold was met, but based on how this is being, or how the long-term plan is currently projecting, it will dip below that 40% for 2024 if everything holds true. It does stay above that 35%. Currently not necessarily mirrored in this study is increasing the levy or a transfer from any of those capital funds that's established in the fund balance policy. So I just kind of wanted to bring that out more so just kind of wanted to shed some light there. We can kind of see that trend towards the back of the study. There are some graphs that show where the fund balance policy line is versus where the cash and then the next year's, or the current year's expenditures are according to the budget. So just kind of wanted to talk that one through, as that does kind of go below the policy, but there is that the verbiage in there as to transferring that out. So just something to kind of watch for if being above that 40% is still desired at the end of 24 if all of these assumptions hold true. All right, so I'm going to move back to page 11. Okay, so the next section on here you can see is the debt service funds. They are the levy amounts. I guess we'll talk about that in the next slide. But you can see the cash balances for all of the debt services are very healthy and monitored annually to determine what next year's levy needs to be done. And I believe DDA does a great job and has a nice summary for staff to follow for next year's levy amounts. Okay. Moving on to the next page, so page 12, kind of the last section here, is where the property tax levied and the tax rate are kind of being portrayed right here. So as you can see, in 2023, the total taxes levy is in the middle of that page 12. In 2024, the levy amount was at $1.2 million. And as you can see here in 2025, with everything kind of being planned in order to cash flow and sustain everything, you're looking at that $1.4 million for the total tax levied in 2025. And then after that, it stays relatively flat. So this is kind of where you're going to get most of the information for what you need for the levy, the impact that it has on the overall tax rate, which is on page 13.
If I may, looking at 2025 at close to 16% change, and then 26 at almost zero change, why aren't those two numbers, why don't we average them out instead of putting a big push on at one time?
Yep, it's absolutely an option. It just looks as though you'll be dipping into reserves. So as long as the council is okay with dipping into reserves and going below that 40%, or even, I mean, you're probably getting closer to your 35% for reserves, there's absolutely no reason that you couldn't do that. You would just want to make sure that any of the cash impact of what is planned for 2025 isn't impacted by the decrease there. But it would just be you're dipping into reserves for for a year for the portion that, isn't necessarily displayed on the report.
All of these are built on assumptions. As we go through there, we have an actual for '23, but I noticed your whole house value, you're increasing 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 for the house value in the city. I don't think that's realistic. So the tax due on housing may be different than what this shows, because what is that, less than 0.5% increase of value is probably not realistic in these times. So, in light of that, there are a lot of assumptions in here that may not be correct after the first year or two.
Mhm.
However, this is simply a guide for us to look at, where it's not cast in stone.
Correct.
All right,
Mhm.
and I've just
Yep.
noticed that as one thing
Yes.
when Ivan brought that up too.
Yep, and some of the numbers, you know, when we're looking from '24 to '25 on the impact to a particular, like a homestead, because the exclusion rates are changing for '25. So, you know, if you have a larger, you know, increase for next year, a lot of the property owners, the amount that they're being taxed at for their taxable value should be less for '25 based on that increase in the homestead
I
exclusion.
know my house tax, valuation went up 20%, 22%, something
Mhm.
like that.
And finally, the legislation is, you know, they're increasing that homestead exclusion to help,
Yeah,
to
that's
help
just
for some
one
of that.
instance, and there's a lot of assumptions that may be correct, may not be correct, but,
Yes, yes.
thank you.
Yep, and then, the last kind of note I had for this page was the fire fund, so Fund 214. Currently, that is a transfer from the general fund, and we are recommending a direct levy for fire, so you don't have that transfer happening from the general fund, it's just a direct levy, going forward there.
And that's the 166?
So that is going to
Yeah.
be, yes, the 166.
One of the things that hasn't been mentioned in the study or schedule is, we've been working here in Janesville on a community center. And there's no numbers plugged in here for the next 5 years to spend on a community center.
Okay, and I guess I wasn't part of the capital that was included with our information, but it's something that can definitely be built in there.
I think part of it is that we haven't got numbers, and you're a numbers person.
Very
So,
much.
Until we get an idea of what the project might cost, you have no input.
It's definitely one of those where it's hard to kind of project out for the next 5 years, without any type of number,
Right.
but it's something, like I said, that could be added
I'm sure
to it.
that's why it isn't included, because there aren't any solid numbers, or even fictitious numbers being thrown out
It
yet.
just makes it hard for me to go back to my committee and say, the council's now looking at setting any money aside for the next 5 years.
Sounds like a work session to me, you know, for us to come up with some ideas.
Yeah.
So by accepting or passing this, how restrictive is this?
Well, we can use this as a guide for when we do our next 5 budgets.
Right, it isn't restricted, it's simply
Right.
telling us what if, correct?
Yep.
All right.
Exactly.
So we don't need any action or anything?
Motion to approve the long-term plan.
To accept their long-term plan as proposed, and like you say, it's a guideline rather than
Yep.
an absolute, like our budget is an absolute.
Mhm.
I would move that we accept their, it looks like it's thorough, it looks like it's complete, looks like you've done a lot of
Perfect.
hard work.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for all your help as
Yeah.
well.
So I would
Thank you.
move we pass, that we accept this.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Man,
Opposed? Passes 3-1. Next item up, the approval of agenda.
I have nothing to add.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
4-0.
Thanks.
Consent agenda.
Yes, tonight's consent agenda, you have the minutes from the last regular council meeting of July 8th, and then we also had that work session on July 22nd, so those minutes are here as well. You have the receivables, and then you have 2 sets of payables since our last city council meeting.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Man,
4-0. Public forum. Do we have anybody here to speak through public forum? Public forum. Moving on. Notices and communications.
I have none.
I have 2. The park board met at the end of last month, and all of their plans and projects are moving forward nicely. I see they ran cement there today,
Yep.
and I stopped, talked to them. They are going to do the basketball court probably this week, they said, if they can fit it, if they can get it done. So a lot of the projects that we were proposing are getting completed in a nice time frame, in spite of the weather. And then we talked preliminarily about budget and next year's plans and plans of 4 or 5 years down the road type thing. The second thing I have is the planning commission met, and that will be on our agenda later on with the Shuck edition.
Sarah, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Ivan?
EDA met, we have another businessman's meeting set up out at the golf course, I believe it's, 4th of September. It'll be similar to the last one we had, just an open house thing for the businessmen to come and socialize.
I don't have anything for the golf board, but the personnel committee has been meeting and some interviews on the utility side of things. Trying to get that position filled. And that's about it. Administrative report.
All right. In my report here, you have July's reconciliation from the bank. You also have the cash balance report, the golf course comparison numbers that you receive every meeting. We did receive the first half local government aid from the state to the tune of about $480,000. We got that a couple weeks ago. Tomorrow, statewide primaries. So from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m., the primaries will take place at Trinity Lutheran Discipling Center. Regret to inform you that Randy Thompson has resigned. His last day was Friday. So he gave a 2-week notice, has taken on a different position in the area. We now are looking at different options or alternatives to, replace that position. City council candidate filing ends tomorrow at 5 PM. So, traditionally what we do, City Hall closes at 4:30, but I'm gonna be here till 5. So people can still come in if they're coming back from work or whatever, we'll still be here until 5. I would recommend that we go with the joint fire board, probably October 14th, if that works. I can talk to the chief about that. We also suggest that we have the annual performance review of myself, Monday, October 14th, for the city council meeting. And I was just gonna add one other thing. We have been meeting once a month here since the summer started. I would suggest that we meet twice in September. That gives us one more council meeting that we can look at budgets before we get the preliminary levy to the county. Is the council okay with meeting September 23rd? It would be the fourth Monday of September. You okay with that? All right, we will plan on that. That's all I have. That's all I got.
Did you say September 23rd?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Motion to approve administrative report.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Four. Department heads, police and fire, who'd like to
Yep.
go first?
Police and fire are here tonight.
Okay, pretty good news today. We are fully staffed. That does bring some challenges of new turnout gear and training that's involved in new staff. But we'll talk about that later in the budget. We are upgrading our four-wheeler, that originally was purchased with, donations and fundraisers. But it's technically city property. Once we buy it with that, it's city property then. We are using that for trade-in for an upgrade on that. I just wanna make sure you guys are aware of that. And, we do have, Andy, maybe you can help me out on this, the upgrades, we're getting with our four-wheeler.
It's just a new Polaris 1500 Extreme Duty Ranger. We should possibly get it this week.
The tracks from our old one are not gonna fit on the new one, so we'd like to put them on min bid, if that's okay with you guys to, I'll need some help doing that, Clinton, there.
I'll need some help too.
I'll talk to Joe probably, or somebody. Otherwise, I think the rest of my stuff, we're currently pretty close to runs for the year that we were last year. I haven't seen anything letting up too much. A little bit lighter, but I hate to get my hopes up that's gonna last. We do have contracts due with the townships at the first of the year. So that's, when we meet with that, that's maybe some discussions with them on contracts. I think there was one township that wants to argue or change the contract to, currently they get billed on budgeted money and they wanna get billed on actual. I don't know how that all works out in the accounting side of the world, but, that's one of the things that I think we'll see. Otherwise, I guess that's all I have. Any questions for me?
Any opinion on that budgeting? I know that was a discussion at our last meeting with the townships, that, one of them, the only problem with actuals is you don't build up your reserve at all. And if things inflate, your reserve becomes a lower percentage of your budgeted items. So when we meet with them, we have to be conscious of that if it's an actual, then it should be an actual plus something to build up the
Should prob-
reserve.
I would suggest bill them and budget it in like a zero up at the end of the year, or whatever, how that works. You know, if we end up going that route, that's be my suggestion. You know, if I come in under budget or whatever, they get a little bit back. If I take a pump out of a truck and there's $40,000 extra that has to come out of that budget, they get that bill too. You know, that's one of the things.
Well, I'm just not comfortable with the actual.
I'm not totally either, but.
It's difficult to maintain your percentage for your reserve so that you can cash flow properly. So that's just a by the by if we get to that discussion, and we will be sitting in that on October 14th, so. Thanks,
Okay.
Mike.
Anything else? Talk to you on the budget side.
Thank you, Mike.
Good evening. I've sent out the quarterly report. You guys should have a copy of that. As you can see, this last quarter, the second quarter, we had a total of 723 calls for service. That was up from 547 in the first quarter and up from 595 second quarter of last year. 62 arrests. You can see the breakdown of the Part 1 and Part 2 offenses. You should have copies of the different offense lists and incidents. So if you have any questions on that.
Any opinion on why it was higher?
We ended up getting full staff with the full-time during this time frame. The laws change. I think that it's a totality of stuff. You got inflation, you got stressors. We had an uptick in the liquor violations this year. Assaults seem to be a little bit on the rise, so it's just kind of a general uptick.
Sorry to hear that. Those are two I'd rather not see increase.
Right.
If it's an increase, I'd like to see a speeding or a
And we did have
crossing the street
some-
improperly or helping a kid out of a tree.
Right.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
We did have some uptick in the traffic enforcement as well. We've had some complaints, and so I've been kind of encouraging officers to stay proactive in those areas.
Curious, I know a few months ago, or a couple of months ago, the North Street, there was someone, noise violation and speeding.
Yes, sir.
Has that been curtailed?
I believe it has. We had the speed trailer up there. I did have the officers sitting and doing traffic enforcement and being visible in those areas. And, you know, we continue to get complaints here and there throughout the city, and when that happens, I try to have them.
That one hasn't reoccurred then, you're thinking?
Have not heard back
Good.
any continuing complaints there, so.
Good, I'm glad that we could do it on the low,
Yep.
down low there.
Yep. Any other questions?
Your new squad is here?
It is not here yet. It's actually up at Guardian right now. I just talked to the guy, the sales gentleman from that place today. They expect to get it in the shop this Friday, and I asked him what kind of a time turnaround we were looking at, and he said about 3 or 4 days. So hopefully we'll see it at the end of next week. He said he was going to deliver it himself, so eager to see that get back here. Touching on that, once we do get that back, Sergeant Vanderwilt was going to work on tearing some of the rest of the equipment out of the other squad car, and then, like the fire department, we'll be looking at either min bid or doing a silent auction or something to try to recover some of them assets. We have our officer, Justice McElmurray, out on her own. She's doing great. We're full-staffed in a full-time area, and right now we're working on a background of a part-timer. And when we get closer to being done with that, I'll sit down with Clinton and discuss that. So hopefully we get some more staff and
Very good.
Thanks, chief.
thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Old business number 1, election judges for primary elections.
Yes, you have, resolution number 23 in front of you tonight that names the election judges for tomorrow's primary election. Ivan, you can't sit next to Janice.
I can't vote on it either.
Mm-mm.
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 0,
And, yep.
1. Well, business number 2,
Yeah, we talked about this at a previous city council meeting. The improvements at the power plant, the best way to do the financing for that is to take out a bond. The auditors were talking about that earlier tonight. We're looking for a motion from the city council that would authorize approving that general obligation equipment certificate. If somebody would be so kind as to read the boldface paragraph for the motion, and then we can move forward with that.
direction for us to proceed tonight, I'm requesting a motion from the city council approving to move forward with issuing a general obligation equipment certification on behalf of the Janesville Public Utility Commission to finance the transformer and the switchgear upgrades.
That was a beautiful motion.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well done, Andrew.
Yeah.
Good job.
On a somewhat related matter, what did that power outage cost us?
Well, we had a backup transformer that they put in there, correct?
Yep.
So we had the part, so,
So we had the transformer.
well, now we don't have any spares.
No, we had the spares, but yeah.
Yeah.
Next item, discuss the next steps for 109 North Main Street.
Jason, you wanna run with it?
Not really, but I suppose I can. At the last meeting, council, you would recall that you had directed Clinton and I to look into the issue with regard to 109 North Main Street. And Clinton and I did, in fact, we met on site. And as is sometimes the case, this issue is not as easy as it may appear on face value. The issue is going to become whether or not the wall that is currently existing is in fact a statutory common wall. I put common wall in quotation marks, because a common wall is typically just that. It's a wall that two buildings share. In this particular structure, it appears as if there are two sets of bricks that essentially abut each other. And I think that there is a legitimate question whether this is or is not a common wall. On its face value, to Clinton and I, lay people, so to speak, it doesn't appear as if it is a common wall. If it's not a common wall, then in fact we've received an invoice to repair our own wall. And as my memo indicated to you, if this is in fact our wall, we have a lot more flexibility as to what we do with this wall. Do we take it down? Do we leave it up? Do we repaint it? You know, something needs to be done, obviously. It is fairly unsightly, so without question something needs to be done. But just getting to the crux of it, we've received an invoice